right.
Mar, send me the YouTube link. I didn't get it.
Okay. We're having a little trouble with the Instagram stream for some reason. That one doesn't want to go up. All right, good afternoon, gentlemen. We're going to start. All right, so it seems that our Instagram is having any difficulty. So if any of your colleagues want to get on, you may have to direct them to the Facebook or the YouTube channel. All right. So good afternoon to all who are joining us. This is the first in a series of panel discussions that TSSU will be hosting. This evening, our topic is going to be, should vaccination be mandatory for frontline workers? Today, our panelists are Mr. Craigston Brathwaite, Mr. Jamal Griffith, and Mr. Kemar Clark. Mr. Brathwaite is the owner of Kaizen Combat, which is a company that offers fitness training and self-defense training. They also do customized training programs. Mr. Clark is a school teacher. Mr. Griffith is an entrepreneur who is also a marketing specialist, and he's starting his own business. And we hear a little bit more about these services a little later on. So for now, we're going to get started, and I'm going to go around the broadcast, and I'm going to ask each of you individually what your take is on this subject matter. We're going to start with you, Craigston.
Okay, so on the topic of mandatory vaccination, I personally completely oppose the mandate on vaccines for anyone, whether frontline or otherwise.
Okay. All right. Mr. Clark.
Good night, everyone. Just like Craigston, I totally oppose the mandate of vaccines. I think any medical decision should be a personal choice, and it's not the position of any government to be making that choice for any citizen, regardless the overall societal impact that decision may have.
Okay. Mr. Griffith. Your mic is muted.
So hey, good evening, everyone. I'm a little bit more on the fence than Kemar and Craigston here. My position is that it's a gray area, and to say that we should mandate or we should not mandate is just pretty much whitewashing the entire situation. So I think it has to be taken into context, and the matter of mandating vaccines to frontline workers should really depend on the situation that is being presented at that point in time. Um, People have different opinions and very passionate opinions and views about this. By the end of the day, people are human, and we have to acknowledge that first, that we are all human, and there's a lot of uncertainty as it relates to the vaccine development, the vaccine effects, long term, short term, all that. So I would not dare say that I think that we should mandate it for all frontline workers, but I think that there is also a case for there to be mandated vaccinations for some people. And with that being said, I think that there should also be allowances for exemptions and exemptions, whether it be medical, whether it be religious, whether it be philosophical. Those exemptions should be made available to people who want to be exempted from the mandatory vaccine. And without with those exemptions in place, there needs to be some other framework to be able to offer a safe and continuously flowing environment for people to work and to play and to go to school. So that's my take on it, to be honest.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. So we're coming back to you, Craigston. All right. So before we dive into your point, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Um, Thanks, Kimar. Myself, Craigson Brathwaite. Besides the long strolls on the beach, I'm actually very much involved in, as you will see by my title, Kaizen Combat is actually specifically geared towards offering self-defense solutions, training for civilians, and I specifically say self-defense for civilians. We also offer training in defensive tactics, which is a completely, I would say, separate service for law enforcement officers, LEOs. Whether it be security, police, military, whoever it may be, they could always benefit from this. The difference being self defense is a completely separate mindset where one seeks only to preserve themselves in a dangerous situation. And in the case of the LEO, the law enforcement officer, their training is geared more toward preserving self, yes, but also preserving the person of interest, bringing them safely into custody. And you would appreciate that there is some crossover between the two, situational awareness and such, but and also execution of techniques, but the objective being so different, hence the reason why we differentiate so clearly between the two.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, Mr. Brathwaite, I must ask, as someone designated as a frontline person, because your training, by my estimation, you should not have been able to perform your service since March of 2020. So surely you should think that the vaccine mandate would help your business, would it not?
Would it help my business? I'm going to answer that, and I think it's going to take us on a bit of a tangent. Yes, what your assumption is correct. Um, we have seen significant limitation of training for Kaizen combat simply because martial arts are generally categorized under combat sports. As a result of this, the restriction on contact and combat sports would have affected us significantly. The training we provide is especially geared towards realism. So, for that reason, we wouldn't carry out training and certify persons if they're training on their own without actual contact. There's a need for that feel of energy between yourself and the training partner. So, to actually answer the question, would it benefit Kaizen combat? I would say that it would not. And the reason why I would say that is first and foremost because our ethical standards would not permit us to agree to anything that would take away a person's individual right to autonomy over their own body. And this right is so fundamental that it's a right upon which so many other rights are based. I would never agree to it. That's me personally. I would even go a little bit further, and this is the tangent I warned about. In the case of the COVID-19 vaccines, which they're actually the talk of the day, I have yet to see any evidence that it actually protects the individual from transmission, infection, and therefore, if it can't protect the individual, I don't see how it could possibly benefit my team by extension or any of the persons that we would train.
Okay. All right. So I have another question for you before we move on to our other panelists based on something you would have just mentioned. So, in an instance where you say you're not okay with it being mandated, um, am I correct in my assumption that if one of your employees decides, well, I am going to get vaccinated for my own reasons, but another employee says no, would you then be requiring testing for those employees to conduct services at a regular rate? And if so, would there be a difference between those who have been vaccinated and who have not?
No, I could respond to that. I would ideally respond to that based on principle. First and foremost, with the evidence that we have before us at this point, there's no reason why we should differentiate between one or the other. If we did require testing, it would have to be required from both of them. I'm especially troubled by the growing trend here in Barbados and other places where persons seek to insist that the individuals who are not vaccinated submit themselves to regular testing, and the actual vaccinated staff, they are exempted from this. I don't think that this is acceptable. Once again, the evidence suggests that there's no real difference between the two. Both vaccinated and unvaccinated can easily contract and transmit the disease. So I would never dare to say that I would differentiate between the two. Are you also asking my position on testing?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I personally do not believe it necessary to insist that persons regularly test. And I will say why. I believe that the PCR tests, let's be perfectly honest, it is a bit invasive to have the instrument being inserted into this very sensitive area of the body. And so there's already some evidence that supports the belief that it can, in fact, cause not only mild irritation, but all the way up to, in some cases, some claims, cancer. I would not support any move to submit persons regularly to testing, especially in a case where I accept that there's a possibility that the regularity of this testing could cause them harm.
Apologies, my mic was muted. Okay, I take your point. All right. Hearing all that you've had to say, we're going to move on to our next panelist, Mr. Clark. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a teacher in of the primary variety. I've been teaching for I think about 13 years now. I taught probably every area, yeah, every age group in every area, probably save for special needs. I am mainly focused now on the class 3s and 4s, the upper juniors, and that's about it. I currently teach at well, I won't go into any more detail. That's about it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So my question to you, as a school teacher, surely you must see some benefit to having children that you have to teach vaccinated, or the teachers themselves being vaccinated.
No, I don't. I
Okay.
don't.
Why is that?
I see none, honestly. Okay. Before I answer that question, let me just go back a bit. All right. Let's imagine a world where mandating vaccines for frontline workers was actually justifiable, right? That means we would have to make certain assumptions, right, about the vaccine first off, and then about the validity of the actual effect of the virus, the overall effect of the virus, right? So we would have to assume that the vaccine actually does what it's supposed to do. And the truth is that it does do what it's supposed to do, because the vaccine manufacturers, the pharmaceutical companies, only ever marketed the vaccine as preventing severe outcomes and death. They never said that it prevented transmission of COVID. The CDC, the president of CDC actually came out and said this. I can't remember how long ago, but it's well known now. In terms of the virus, okay, I would have to imagine that the virus would have to be extremely dangerous. This is all going towards the point of actually having to justify mandating a vaccine to frontline workers in general. The virus would have to be extremely dangerous, sorry, which COVID really isn't. It still has a survivability rate of 99.7% worldwide. And then it would also have to, the virus would also have to affect a large cross section of the society, which COVID does not. After 2 years, we know that COVID primarily affects the old, the morbidly obese, those persons with a BMI of over 30, and those persons with not even one comorbidity, 2 or more comorbidities, or in other words, those persons who are extremely sick already. To encapsulate all of that, COVID affects those persons who do not have a healthy enough immune system to fight it off. That is not the vast majority of persons population populating any school in Barbados. No, no, no. The argument, especially not children, and the vaccines are available for those teachers who may have some sort of comorbidity or whatnot, or fear for their lives or whatnot, be able to get vaccinated. And the vaccine, like I said, it prevents severe outcomes and death. Right? Now, does that answer your question? Or should we
Yeah,
continue?
yes, it does. We're just trying to get a sense of where your what your justification was for your stance, and they think you've done a good job in expressing that.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
one more point. The main argument I've heard for students, especially being vaccinated, is well, they've come to me and they told me that children in general, because children are how they are, because they socialize how they are, masks make no difference to children. Like they're gonna be around each other, masks will be off, etc., etc. They say children are a hotbed for spreading COVID. And obviously, a lot of these children, they have grandparents and whatnot. Again, those persons who are significantly affected by COVID, the older persons in our society, right? So they could all obviously take home COVID to these persons, right? To that, I have two rebuttals, because one, those persons again should have been vaccinated, and the vaccine does what it proclaims it's supposed to do: prevent severe outcomes and death. And two, a study was actually done, I believe, in Iceland, where they actually mapped the virus. So they were able to tell exactly who passed on the virus to whom. And I think this was over a 6 month period or something like that. And what they found was children do catch COVID, right? But it's actually much more likely for an adult to pass on COVID to a child than for a child to pass on COVID to an adult.
Okay. That's interesting. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that, Mr. Clark. We're going to move on to our next panelist, Mr. Griffith. Could you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so my name is Jamal Griffith. I am a marketing executive and I operate mostly in the tourism sector. I was actually employed last when I had a job, an actual day job, by two hotels. So I was very much involved in the day to day operations of tourism and talking to and um, taking care of and handling tourists and people from overseas and that sort of thing. As well as that, I am an entrepreneur and I have two businesses that I've started. One's a marketing agency and the other is a pizza business. The pizza business does pop-ups at Brighton Farmers Market on Saturday mornings and Dread Hawk Brewery on Fridays and Saturday evenings, maybe 2 or 3 times a month. So you can look for me there.
Thank you for that, Mr. Griffith. So tell me something. So you're an entrepreneur and you were working in the hotel business, meaning that you were on the front line. So
Hmm.
surely you must believe that vaccination could have benefited the industry you were in and surely can benefit the one that you are in now.
Um, to answer that question very bluntly, I would say yes, and I say yes from a personal point of view. So I have the vaccine. I've taken the vaccine months ago. Um, I can't say I'm too pleased about having to take a booster. I'm very much on the fence about that one though, but I don't really want to be taking any more of anything. But what I will say is that I did personally believe, and I do personally believe that the vaccine can in fact help those industries in terms of the frontline workers. And when I say help, there's two aspects to that. We have to be honest when we're talking about these two aspects. The first aspect, and people always say like people who own businesses and people who are involved in government, people who are involved in the administration of businesses and that sort of thing, always say it's the health. We're looking after the health and safety of the workers. We have to be honest. The health and safety of the workers, yes, it's important, but when a business owner or a government official is talking about that, about vaccines and safeguarding anything, it's mostly about the economy and it's mostly about the health of a business or the longevity or safeguarding the business's operation. So that's the first point we have to start at. We have to be honest, and we can't really we shouldn't really lie and say that we're thinking first, or people are thinking first about health and safety of employees, because if that were the case, a lot of other things will be done differently, right? So let's say businesses look after the health and safety, or the health and operations and profit of a business. So if you don't have employees who are healthy and can work for you, if you don't have employees who can come to work regularly, if you don't have customers who can also come and enjoy safely, you pretty much don't have a viable business. And one of the main challenges that people had last year and into this year was staffing. A lot of issues occurred with staffing, right? And yes, you have to, owners of businesses and stuff are in fact very cognizant of the health and safety impact of their workers. But as I say, if you talk to your workers and be like, yeah, hey, we're thinking about your health and safety first, the staff are not really going to take you on. They're going to understand if you say, hey guys, we need to make sure the business is viable, we need to make sure that we can pay you, and for this to be done, we need to put certain things in place, right? So that's the first part of it. It's health and safety of both workers and health and safety of the business, or longevity of the business, right? So I do think that it can help, but I'm not very sure or very certain that mandating a vaccine for whitewashing the entire situation and telling everyone that they should take a vaccine is the right course of action for this country or for any country. People need to have, as Christian said, autonomy over the choices that they make for their body, and that's one of the first. That's a human right. That is a human right. But at the same time, you have to balance that human right with our civic responsibility as civilians or members of a society that is not beholden, but the government takes care of the society, and we have to balance our rights with our responsibilities. So we can't say one without the other. Yes, we have a right to the autonomy of our body and what goes into it, but at the same time, we have a responsibility to ensure that society is able to go forward positively, go forward beneficially, and that the economy is able to progress. If the economy cannot progress, the people of the nation cannot progress. If the people of the nation do not progress, there is no nation to be had, and there's no more development, or there's no more progress. So you have to balance those things. I'm a person. I operate in gray a lot. I don't see black. I don't see white. Well, I do see them, but I'm very much aware of the gray areas that exist between hard facts, both black and white. There's gray areas within the context of frontline workers. I would say we are the ones who are dealing with people on a constant basis. We're the ones who are helping tourists. We're the ones who are helping each other. We're the ones who are in hospitals. We're the ones who are in gas stations. We're the ones who are on the security front line. We're police officers across the board. And coming up to this, a lot of people messaged me and said, I don't think it'll be fair if people who were working last year under these circumstances had to be mandated a vaccine, and then if they don't get a vaccine, that they're fired. Um, a lot of what goes on in the world is not fair, but I would definitely say that that would not be a fair situation for anybody who is a frontline worker in the healthcare industry, or a frontline worker in the security industry, or a frontline worker in the hotel industry who was trying their best to help whatever business they were working with to go forward positively during the tumultuous time that we had last year. Unsurety was plentiful. This was the first time for a lot of us. This was the first time for me, first time for all you guys. I don't think there was anybody who operated in this instance of COVID who would have operated in a pandemic before, or as big a pandemic as COVID has, right? So thinking about the rights and responsibilities, we also have to look at the adverse effects that a mandate would have on the country, on the people, on business. At the end of the day, you can mandate somebody to take something. You can mandate that I take something as your employee, but I also have a choice to continue to be your employee. So there's always a choice, right? No one's going to come and take anything, just stick it into your skin without you saying, hey, yes, I agree. There's always a choice. It's either a hard choice or a less hard choice, right? So you have the choice. So nobody's going to come and do that. So there's compulsory vaccinations for employees at businesses is not something that I really think should happen. You should give your employees the option, right? If the choice is taken away as an employer without any legislation in place from the government, you have to be willing as the employer to take responsibility and take liability should anything happen to your employee who you mandated or who you coerced into taking the vaccine. Should that employee have any adverse effects from the vaccine going forward, the responsibility or liability should fall to the employer who made the employee go for a vaccine. Barring that, if the employer wants to cover themselves, they can put up a document where the person signs. But at the end of the day, the employee still always has the choice. And I think it's best that we as people in business, we as a country, the government, we need to talk to everyone to get more people into getting the vaccine. If you want to go along the lines of moral suasion as opposed to legislature suasion, as opposed to putting it into the legislature and saying you have to do it, we have to have more honest conversations and more in-depth conversations from a real point of view. It's like you don't get the vaccine, guys, we're not going to be able to make any money. That's the fact. And not everyone's going to have to take it. Those of you who are willing to take it, come forward and take it. Those of you who don't want to take it, let us know why, and then we can figure out something else afterwards. But that's my position on it, to be honest.
Thank you for that. No, what's interesting is that everybody here has agreed, but for different reasons, that it should not be mandatory. Now, Jamal, you would have said something, and when you said it, something came to mind. Recently, I don't know if any of our viewers follow the NBA, but there was this big controversy again. There was this basketball player called Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie Irving.
Right. There was a mandate that passed in New York where you had to be vaccinated in professional sports if you're going to be in certain arenas. So basically, he could not ply his trade in the city that he works in, right? And
Yeah.
it caused major controversy. There were a lot of people who called him out. And based on what you were saying, it wasn't fair. And he did not want to take it for his own reasons. I think at some point he addressed it. But what came to mind was the fact that it felt as if we were just equally divided. And there were so many people telling this man that because you're being paid so much money to entertain us, you should take this vaccine because your teammates need you so they could continue to entertain us in a particular manner, right? And this is what you were saying, as we said, it's not fair. And we've all said it should be the person's choice. But in an instance like that, and I'm gonna send this question around to all the panelists, should it matter what it is that you do? I know we're speaking mainly about frontline workers here, but should it matter that you are a janitor, that you only clean the building after hours, you don't see anybody, or before hours, or you're a security officer, you have to interact with every single person who walks in? Should it matter what level of work or frontline work or interaction you have with the public? Should that matter in the decision that you make?
Can I just add one point to
Sure,
the
go ahead.
to the Kyrie Irving situation? He came out and said that he was actually not taking it. Yes, he said for personal reasons, but also he was kind of being a voice for those persons who might not be in his position financially, who didn't want to take it. Okay, he was kind of standing up for them and shedding light on the situations of those people. I just wanted to say that. I guess when my mic is on, I can answer. I can go ahead and answer first. Should it matter? No, because I think like Craigson made this point, Jamal made this point also. It's a personal choice, and no one besides yourself personally should have any type of bearing or weight on that choice. Like I said again, if it was a situation where taking the vaccine ensure the safety of others around you, which we know is not the case, okay, because again, the vaccine only prevents severe outcomes and death for the person that takes it, not for anyone else. So if it was a situation where taking the vaccine actually improved the situation for others around them, then yeah, sure, it would matter. But in this particular instance, no, I don't believe that.
Mr. Brathwaite, here to chime in.
Oh yeah. Just want to take the time to gather my thoughts. So I'll say this, at risk of taking it a little bit deeper than the original question. I like to approach things as logically as possible. Right? So let's look at what we do know. The vaccine does not prevent contraction. That is, the individual who has taken the vaccine is not prevented from getting the disease. It does not prevent you from transmitting it to others. If you have it, it doesn't cure you of the disease. I then am left with the question, what exactly does it accomplish? Because if I apply these three facts to the statements being used, the arguments being used to justify the mandating of these vaccines, it leaves me in a very peculiar position because it's not going to protect my teammates, it's not going to protect my family, it's not going to protect me, it's not going to protect my neighbor, it's not going to protect my co-worker. It protects really no one. Sure, the argument is there that it will lessen the chances of a severe case of COVID, but that benefit is to me and me alone. Why then does the government or any employer or anyone for that matter, besides myself, have any right to weigh in on the decision whether I should take it or not? There really is no justification for it. And in the case of the government, I would go so far as to say this. There needs to be some level of liability when you insist that persons take into their body something that they really do not want to. In the case of the employers, that responsibility should be there as well. You must also understand too that there's a certain level of precedence that goes along with the law. So if it is that we're going to set a standard here where the employee gets to decide, okay, for the sake of safety in the workplace, I will insist that you take this particular medical treatment, whether you like it or not. Is he also going to stand responsible the next time that the cold season comes around or the flu season? Will I be able to hold him legally responsible if I contract the flu at work? What if I catch red eye? What if I catch gastro? Are employers really prepared to deal with these, take these on as responsibilities further down the road? I really don't see any real logical explanation for the direction that we're going right now, both locally and internationally, as a people, as a society, as a race. Where are we going with this? What precedence is this going to set? When they mandate and insist that I take this particular medication, is there another one on the horizon that they're going to mandate that I take? It's a very slippery slope, if you ask me. So at some point, somebody has to pump the brakes, read it back in, and set a more logical course for self and everybody else.
Okay, Mr. Brathwaite. So just a follow-up question on that. Um, so I'm getting the sense that you're saying by doing this, we are opening the door basically. Um, so we are giving them the ability to do something that they may abuse later on, as you would have mentioned. So my question is then, it's already mandatory to take to have been inoculated or vaccinated for certain things to even go to school. Like you can't become a university student without having all your shots up to date. You can't go to, and I stand to be corrected by Mr. Clark. Um, you need to be vaccinated for certain things for you to be permitted into the public school. So
Uh,
I know you're saying that this
yeah,
could be a slippery slope.
yeah, just
Sorry,
to add,
you were saying.
point you made about being vaccinated to attend school. As far as I know, religious exemptions can be made. Religious or
Okay,
medical exemptions, because obviously everybody can't may have some sort of pre-existing medical condition that may cause them to not be eligible to take a particular vaccine. And
Understood.
also the safety profiles of those vaccines that you have to take are well known. So that's another argument against the mRNA vaccines, especially like no one can say that they know what's going to happen 5 years from now. And to mandate that a large cross section of your population take this thing that no one knows the true safety profile of it, long term safety profile of it, is irresponsible.
Okay. So my
Very well
question
said.
is then, because if memory serves correctly, recently AstraZeneca was approved by the CDC, right? It got approved by the CDC. So I'm saying, so it's already trending in the direction that all the other vaccines that are well known is trending in. So if it meets those benchmarks that Mr. Clark just indicated, what's to say that this vaccine does not then funnel into the already existing platform of certain vaccinations that are already accepted that you need to have this if you want to enter the school system, if you want to travel, if you want to do so many things that you need to show proof of these vaccinations in order to do so. So, what would stop that transition from happening?
Can I? Right. Okay.
Go
Um,
ahead, go ahead.
yeah. In the instance of the other vaccines, if you would notice, polio, smallpox, all those, right? Um, those particular viruses are of like children, especially, are of great risk when it comes to those particular viruses, right? And diseases. COVID is actually the exact opposite. Children are of no risk or of very little risk, infinitesimally small risk from actually developing severe outcomes and dying from COVID. So then there's a justification for um, adding the mRNA vaccines, especially to the slate of vaccines that children have to take to enter schools. Because again, like the point I tried to make, it doesn't prevent contraction or transmission of the virus. So there's absolutely no justification whatsoever for children to have to take it.
I take your point about children having to take it, but my question was more along the lines of the existing framework for, and not just children, but vaccinations on hold. There's certain places in the world that you can't travel to without proof of vaccination against certain things. So my question specifically is with regard to that framework, especially since like, and I only know of AstraZeneca. I stand to be corrected if others have gotten the approval from the CDC. But if they reach the benchmarks that you mentioned earlier, what's to stop that transition into that being okay? Because currently, as a society, we are okay with the other vaccines being made mandatory.
Well, the argument still stands. You see, the fundamental foundation upon which the argument to mandate vaccines is basically to stop the spread, right? To protect each other, right? Right. But the point is that yes, AstraZeneca was approved by the CDC, but still there is absolutely no evidence. Furthermore, AstraZeneca themselves said that their vaccine prevents severe outcomes and death. They never, none of them, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, any of them, never said that the vaccine prevents contraction or transmission of COVID. And since the proliferation of Delta, it's actually gotten even worse. Because before you would be getting breakthrough cases, no, I can't even call them breakthrough cases anymore because they happen at such an alarming rate. I think Craig still made the point that there, in terms of contracting the virus and spreading the virus, there really isn't any difference between a vaccinated person and an unvaccinated person. I think they actually did studies that measure the viral loads in an unvaccinated person that caught COVID and a vaccinated person that caught COVID. And the viral loads in most instances were exactly the same. So again, the argument still remains. If the vaccine does what I think you are implying that it does, then yeah, sure, there may be an argument for that. But there's no evidence to say that they do that. So where's the argument? Where's the justification?
All right. Anybody else care to chime in?
Let me answer that question. I just want to touch on something that Craig said very quickly. Something that Well, two things. Well, Kristen was talking about the vaccine, right? And you were saying, Kristen, that it doesn't protect anybody else. It doesn't protect you from catching it. It doesn't protect you from passing it on to somebody else if you catch it. It just pretty much, sorry guys, I swear I don't have COVID. That's not COVID. uh, but at the same time, the only
Vaccinated is pregnant.
the only thing that the only thing that it could really do is protect you from really getting ill or really ill, having a super high viral load or getting mortally sick, right? When I hear that, it reminds me of a seatbelt. Like I drive a car, I wear a seatbelt. It doesn't protect anybody else from me driving. It doesn't protect me from anybody else crashing into me. It doesn't protect anybody else who's in my car that's with me if I get in an accident. But it doesn't even stop me from getting into an accident myself. I can still get into an accident. But if I do get into an accident, I have a little bit better of a chance to live and not be like maimed for life with the use of a seatbelt. When you were speaking about the vaccine, that's what was coming to my mind. And just want to leave it at that. But the other thing that you said too was that employers, and we both said it, employers have a responsibility, and the government furthermore should have a responsibility. If you mandate vaccines, you have a responsibility, people who you mandate these vaccines to, if there's negative effects. We all see the ads on television with have you taken blah 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 and you suffer from mesothelioma and blah blah, all these things. A lot of these drugs that came out that were supposedly okay, people have these really negative effects from them. And no 20 and 30 years afterwards, people are now finding out that a lot of these things were caused by these drugs. So if the government does mandate that stuff, they do need to have some sort of liability and responsibility to the people who took the vaccine under the mandate. But I always think about the liability that employers have as well. If you are a business owner and let's say you have employees who work for you, and you have a duty as the owner of the business to make sure that you provide a safe work environment for your employees. But you also have the duty to make sure you provide a safe um, environment for anyone who's coming to do business there, customers, suppliers, whoever else is coming to actually do business there. And I'm saying this because I operated for the past 6 years in the tourism industry, well, actually in the hotel industry. And one of my functions was in tourism industry because I was marketing, I was sales and marketing. And under my remit in sales and marketing, a lot of it was public relations. And as well as public relations, and it's a bit of a tangent, but it's going to come back together. So public relations was one aspect, but as well as that, I dealt with the tour operators who actually bring people here. So like all the Virgin Atlantics, BAs, all of them, they all contract the hotels under health and safety rules and health and safety laws. So much so that at one point in time last year or a year before, they had such stringent health and safety laws. They were sending people to Barbados to check balconies to make sure that each balcony post was a specific width apart so that kids' heads couldn't fit through them. And they were walking around with a child head size balloon trying to stick it through the actual balcony to see if it would fit. If it was too big, you failed. You had to actually fix your balcony. So part of the job was making sure and contracting with the tour operators and stuff like that. And a lot of what they do is they bring customers here who are very litigious. So they bring customers here from UK, from Europe, from US. And sometimes we used to operate a all-inclusive hotel. So they would go to the hotel, they would drink all of the drinks. They would drink the drinks from morning until evening, and they would get drunk. They would drink the rum punch and think that it is fruit punch. And they would get sick. And what would happen is the next day they would be puking all over the place. And a lot of them would blame the puking and the vomiting on the food as opposed to the drinks, because you're pretty much drunk and you have a hangover, but you don't want to say, hey, I drank too much. So you can easily say, hey, I ate this or whatever. And we had so many claims from, and I had to deal with the claims from a point of view of dealing with the tour operators and stuff like that, we had to deal with so many claims from um, tourists who said that they ate something in the sushi restaurant, or they ate something in the steak restaurant, they ate something in the buffet restaurant that made them sick. I mean, a lot of the claims were false. I mean, because we had all the documentation, like HACCP, all the temperatures, all that stuff. But my point is that they came here saying that we have a right to make sure that their vacation is good and that they don't get sick, and we provide them with good food and blah blah blah. So on the flip side, as an employer, you have the right to your employees. So when I come to work and I catch COVID from another one of my co-workers, I am going to hold you, my employer, responsible because you have somebody there who has COVID, and no, I can't come to work for 2 weeks because you let somebody else. And that's what people think, right? That's what people think. And then also customers coming in now, and customers come into the actual business, and a customer may catch COVID from somebody who works there. And then you have to now deal with a customer's litigation against you, a business owner, small business owner, who has a customer now saying, "Hey, you have me out of work for 2 weeks. I'm a big shot lawyer. You have to compensate me for $20,000 per day that I would have made because I was in Harrison's Point." So there's a lot of liability and there's a lot of responsibility and there's a lot of gray area there, and that's all they just want to bring to the fore. We have to really think about all those things too. So I do understand people being like people being gung ho about mandating because they want to safeguard themselves, but we have to go about how that is, even if the government does not actually set some sort of legislation in place as it relates to vaccines, even if it's that people don't have to be mandated to be vaccinated. Right now, there's a current vacuum, and you know what it is, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. Whenever there's a vacuum, something comes in the vacuum and takes its place. So if the government does not set some sort of legislation or something in place to put this vaccine stuff on the right track, whether it's mandating or not, employers are going to start to do it, as we've seen with Lionel C. Hill, as we've seen with Census Marche, as we've seen with the hotel that's on top of British Hill, as we've seen with the dental clinic. So people are going to insert their own interpretations of what it should be if we don't have some sort of guidance from the government in terms of having it or not having it. So that's my take on that. And I just wanted to bring that to the fore of the conversation as well.
If I may say
Thanks for
something
jumping.
really quick in
Yeah, I
response.
was just about to say that Craigson was itching to reply. So go ahead.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know he was.
Yeah. Or the itch is under control now. So I like what you said. I like what you said, Jamal, because it especially brings to the fore what I consider to be a significant problem that seems to be going unnoticed here in Barbados. Now, let's think about this. I am always very impressed when we as a people could set by way of principle, laws, rules to govern certain activities, especially in the calm times when we're level headed. And we could see how these things could be problematic a little bit further down the road.
Hmm.
So, sometime in 2020, there was an act passed here in Barbados. The act was called the Employment Protection Against Discrimination Act. And it was passed, as it just so happens, by this same administration. Now, I remember the Prime Minister at one point calling on the Attorney General to give an official opinion from his office
Hmm.
on the whole matter of employers being able to mandate or coerce cooperation from their employees as it relates to vaccination. So let me just quickly read Section 6 of that same, or rather Section 2 and 6 of that same Employment Protection Against Discrimination Act. It says verbatim, subject to Section 8, an employer shall not require a person to answer questions in relation to or undergo a test for a medical condition as a precondition to entering into a contract of employment or as a condition for the continuance of employment. So, in simple terms, an employer really, by law, cannot ask an employee to submit to any form of testing, whether it be as a condition for employment or continuation of employment. So based on that law alone, all the examples that you refer to, Hill, um, census, whatever, any of these places that insist that their employees be vaccinated, they're really acting in contravention of the law. And it's very sad, in my opinion, that we could find ourselves as a people in 2021 facing a situation where the government would confidently tell us that they're not mandating vaccination for any of the citizens, but yet through silence and misguiding statements encourage employers to exactly that on persons. And this is especially troubling because when I have conversations, I usually create the image in persons' minds. Don't just think about you or me. Because I heard Jamal, I heard you mention earlier, the decision that persons have if their employer is requiring it of them. You can easily choose not to be employed by that person, and that's perfectly true. However, I can't help but feel compelled to consider all those other persons out there that I may not know personally. But consider the image of that lone mother who, due to COVID, would have been out of work for months, if not over a year. She's struggling. Whatever help she was getting has now run out or is running out. She's back out to work. And now she's approached by her employer, and he or she says, let's not paint the men as the bad guys in these scenarios. But this person insists to continue working here, to retain this job, to receive that salary that you're looking forward to at the end of the month, to feed those 4 hungry children at home, no one else to help. You absolutely must submit to this vaccination, this medical treatment. You must submit yourself to it, or regular testing. She is in a mandatory situation. She has absolutely no choice but to either submit or accept that those 4 kids, as well as herself, will go hungry. I don't think that's a position that any Barbadian should have to face or find themselves in at this point in time. I don't see any justification for the position that the government has taken. I don't see any justification for the decision by the Attorney General not to speak clearly on this, and any statement made by any member of government subsequent where they state that they cannot, and we've heard it all before, we are not mandating, but we cannot stop an employer from doing what he or she must do to make their place of work safe. Well, we already just saw the little excerpt from the specific law. They're in contravention of the laws of Barbados. And every last one of them should be held accountable for it. It's an impossible situation to put any person in. It's unethical, it's immoral, and at some point, somebody needs to take a stand against it.
Okay, well explained, Craigston. But I do have a question for you. Now, understanding that asking someone to submit to a test is in contravention to the act, my question then becomes: should we, as a people, those of us who said vehemently, or even from a position of uncertainty, that I will not be taking the vaccine, should I also, as one of those individuals, quote this law to say, you can't make me get tested to come to work? Should that be a position that we should be taking?
Yes, absolutely. I would encourage every single citizen be very aware of the laws of the land. I don't expect everyone to become a lawyer. I don't expect everyone to go and study at the, might I say, illustrious University of West Indies Cape Hill campus, the most honorable faculty
Beacon
of
on the
law.
hill.
The beacon on the hill. Yeah, the light. Well, what is it, Kimar? The light rising in the east.
Yeah.
We don't need to go that full extent. The reality is that we just need to know the very basics to understand what our rights are. But in responding to that question, I want to point something out. The citizens don't even, and once again, I encourage it, every citizen should have a basic understanding of the law, an understanding of how to research specific laws as they speak to specific situations that they may face. But at the same time, once again, going back to that practice of setting principles, laws, rules, guidance, governance in times of calm in preparation for times such as these. The reality is that we have a labor department. And from the time that these practices surface, it is really the onus is really on them to intervene on the behalf of the citizens. It should not come down to the citizen knowing the specific law and being able to quote it specifically. No, they ought to be intervening, and that's another failure, in my opinion, on the part of government. They should have intervened from the start, and every single government minister who ever spoke on this matter, in public, in private, I don't care if you're sitting in front of a camera or if you're having a private discussion in the back of a car from point A to point B, the position should always be clear. It is wrong. It is unethical. It is immoral. It is illegal.
So here's a little, and I'm going to be a bit of a devil's advocate at this point. I'm an employer. I'm not mandating that my staff be vaccinated to come to work, but I ask you to, please submit to a test weekly that the government is not going to charge you for, just so we can continue operation, because I'm the owner of Kaizen Combat and it was closed from March of 2020. I have not been able to do business. I just get a chance to open. So I would really not like a case where we have to close for an extended period of time. I would like to be able to offer our services. We're not mandating anything. We're asking you to please, work with us and get tested. But based on what you just said, Mr. Blathwaite, that employee could look at me and say, I'm working with you. However you fare, boss man, you fare. So what is your response to that?
Well, first of all, let me just once again say that the owner of Kaizen Combat would never take such a stance. But as Kimar explained, devil's advocate, let's entertain. Were I making that request of an employee and the employee took that position, I would probably promote him. He has every right. His knowledge, his understanding of his rights, he has every right to receive every reward possible for doing just that. But that's just Kaizen Combat. Were it somebody else, I would say that really it's well within their rights to, it's really within anybody's rights at any point, for any reason, to leave any job. But let's just not miss the point here. What I'm really looking at is the principle of it all. No one should ever be put in that position. Let's be honest. Employees turn up to work. Sure, they may love the job, but they turn up to work because they have personal goals that they're going after. They have persons depending on them that they must take care of. They're going after a quality of life that they believe they deserve. And they believe we all deserve a chance at just that. So why would any employer think it to be their place to come and put an employee in a difficult situation such as that? It's unacceptable. If I think, as the owner of Kaizen Combat, that I've made myself safer by taking this vaccine or any other medical treatment for that matter, well then great. Let's look at the evidence. I would have made myself safer. But when I look at the evidence available to me right now, I can't possibly say with any certainty that their decision to submit to either medication or testing is going to make their life any better. So therefore, I don't have the right to tread into those grounds.
Okay, anybody else care to take a crack at this scenario?
Well, I don't want to take a crack at the scenario, but I want to just shout Christ in for a minute, and I want to just stick a pin in something there. The statement I said about you have a choice is not a callous statement. Just understand that it's not me saying.
For sure, yes, definitely.
Right, it's not me saying if you don't want a vaccine. I mean, you have to obviously be aware of people's situations. But I said that thinking about a friend of mine, former colleague of mine, who was management at a certain establishment, and she was there for over 20 years. And the COVID situation brought about a change in all of our paychecks. From last year, a lot of us were asked to forego a portion of our paycheck, right? In lieu of not working full hours, in lieu of not having full business. So we were on decreased pay. So I think she was on 50% pay, and she was there for 25 years. She was part of management. But I will tell you this for a fact: she was not being paid management salary. She was being paid salary as somebody who got put in a management position, and someone who they were taking advantage of in terms of what she could do and what she was supposed to be paid, right? So I say that to say she was on 50% pay, and then I think she went to 60% pay because I think things got a little bit better. And after a while, she went to the owners of this establishment and said, "Hey, I want to know when you can give me back my full salary. I mean, give me back full 100% salary." And they said, "We will give you your 100% salary when you go and get your vaccine. If you go for your vaccine." And you know what she did? She didn't go for her vaccine. She left. She resigned and left the place and started her own business, doing what she had to do. So that's why I say you always have a choice. And not everybody is not always equipped at that point in time to do what she did. I don't think she was even aware that she was equipped at that point in time to do what she did. But when they said that to her, she said she thought to herself, they really couldn't care about me that much. That saying this is my situation. I need to have my whole paycheck, and you're only able to give me half, and you can give me more if I get a vaccine. You don't really care about my health and safety, because if you did, you would give me my full paycheck right now, and then we could talk about anything else afterwards, right? So I say that to say that, and the thing about I just want to put a pin in the situation with. That was a really good answer you did, Christ, and I really appreciate you for that and for the answer. And I hope and I believe honestly that if somebody did say that to you, that you probably would promote them. I believe you for that. To be honest, right? You seem like a guy of principles. But I read the position of what's his name, Leslie Haynes, the lawyer who was asked by the government to give his take on the whole mandatory vaccine thing. And even though there is not a vaccine mandate in place currently in for government or for actual businesses and that sort of thing, um, Mr. Haynes seems to think, and a lot of lawyers seem to think that mandatory vaccines would hold up in court depending on certain situations, depending on one, risk, depending on two, industry, and depending on, I guess, the person themselves. So based on this guy's position, Leslie Haynes, who's a QC, he suggests that many cases the employers will be able to justify employees taking vaccines, and even in most cases, and depending on the circumstances of the individual employment relationship, um, the nature of the of the industry, and most of all, it depends on how the actual process is done. He seems to think that there's a chance that employers could actually have their decisions, like Lionel C. Hill could have his decision upheld in court if a employee was to take him to court for that. And that's a big gray area to me, because the government is saying employers need to do what they have to do to safeguard their their um their business, their industry, and their workplace. But the government is also saying, hey, we don't want to mandate vaccines. The government literally said we don't want to mandate vaccines. But if you as an employer is mandating vaccines and you can justify that this is what I need to do for my business to survive, and then you have to take it to court, there's nothing that the employee can do in terms of having a legal right, because you will be seen as a person with the legal right as long as it can be justified, right? And they say also, if it's properly done. So I guess how it's done in terms of if you go and tell someone, I guess how you mandate it or how you tell the person about the vaccines is also a big factor in the whole vaccine mandate. So if you go to an employee and you say you need to get a vaccine or you have to leave, then you're wrong. That employee will take you to court. They will take you to the take down to the baller, and they have all rights to. If you go to an employee, however, and you say something like, "Hey, you know, this is the situation, blah blah blah. We would like everyone to get vaccines, but if you don't get a vaccine, we can try to work out some other thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be um, testing all the time. I just want to say I had about 6 tests in the past 2 months, not because I had any risk of COVID, but because I had situations I needed to clear myself for, like bar race. And I was going to a staycation with some friends. Everyone wanted to make sure that everyone was good, so they were like, "Let's submit to some tests." And I did about 6 tests in the past like 2 months for two bar race pop-ups, two bar race events this weekend, a friend's event, and some other thing. And it's the most unpleasurable thing I've ever experienced in my whole life. Like I've never stuck anything up my nose willfully, and I never want to. And having to submit to that as an employee every Monday or every other Monday is not a very viable thing for me or for anybody else. I would think it's not an enjoyable part of your work experience. So I think there has to be other things in place. Um, Make sure everyone wears masks, making sure you provide people with sanitizer, making sure you educate, re-educate, reiterate, and just try to do what you can until you can get the person to then make their own decision on their own. But employers who do in fact go about this the other way, and as you were saying, you call it the Employee Protection Against Discrimination Act. Is that what you said? It was the EPAD, but there's
Yeah.
the ERA, which is the Employment Rights Act. I think that is part of that as well. Any employer who goes against that, who does it in that way, will be absolutely contravening the ERA, and they will be wrong, and they will be taken to court, and they will be waxed out, rightfully so. But we need to be careful that we don't we don't give employers all the rights, right? We need to be careful that we also safeguard the rights of the employees, because as a really wise lawyer once said in something that I read in a paper that I read, he said, laws are not necessarily intended to uphold the rights of the stronger party. Laws are supposed to uphold the rights of the weaker party, and in most cases, the weaker party is always going to be the employee, right? Unless employees collectively realize that collectively we have more power than employers. So that's just my piece there.
Very well said, sir. Very well said.
Mr. Clark, we
Kimar.
haven't heard from you. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Kimar. Or rather, wait, just a second. Just a second. I think I should probably say this before I forget. Really good points there from Jamal. The first thing I will say is that in the case of your friend, I feel badly for what happened to her, but I really appreciate her being able to stand on her own principles. The mere fact they communicated that they can, in fact, supply the full salary on a specific condition shows clearly where their mind and where their priorities lie. So, what I would say to her is, I really wish she had gotten it in writing. I really wish
You
she
really
had
wish you had.
gotten it in writing. I would love to
I
see them express that in writing. That
Yeah,
would
me
be,
too.
yeah,
Me too.
because and I would never advise any, I'm not a lawyer, but I would never advise any employee to make the decision to walk away from a job under these conditions. A decision to come and change, any employer saying this to you has made a unilateral decision on the terms of employment without consulting you. That is enough grounds, in my opinion, my personal, far from legally trained opinion.
It's a correct opinion though,
That is more than enough reason that you can go after them for wrongful dismissal.
because as
You
you're
can,
saying, what she should have done was she should have looked back at her contract and she should have said, "Hey, this is my contract that I have with you. If you want me to get it back, you need to renegotiate my contract based on the
there you
terms you're
go.
saying." That's what should
Exactly.
have happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely
And
right.
if I could just go on a limb here, Kimar, and just toss a little something more in the mix, and I'm still want to hear from Kimar as well. But are we at all considering the fact that there is substantial evidence suggesting that? All right, before I go there, let's look at language. Big fan of psychology. I think that we're missing something very critical here in the conversation. Not just this conversation we're having here, but the national as well as the international conversation. I think is a very dangerous thing when we assume in our language. So consider this: every time we say a vaccine, we conjure in persons' minds the understanding of what a vaccine has historically always done. It's supposed to bring about inoculation. It's supposed to bring about an immune response. That's
Just
supposed to,
immunize.
there you go. So consider this one, which, as Kimar so well said before, there are really no long-term studies on it.
Yeah.
The reality is, if you really look into the science surrounding these present vaccines, there's no guarantee of a lasting immune response. In fact, a lot of the things that were claimed in relation to these vaccines have fallen apart since they've come to market. So the reality that people claim, which is that they're going to somehow protect you, and they're the deciding factor between whether or not we end this pandemic. There's no real evidence for it. What there is, however, on the other side, you have many, many cases where persons have claimed adverse reactions, significant, serious adverse reactions. Some persons claim to have developed significant neurological disorder. There has been confirmed cases, there have been confirmed cases of death as a result of the vaccinations. These are the kinds of risks that persons are really negotiating when they go to get this specific vaccination. So every time we say a vaccine, and when we hear the lawyers speak, the QC speak of persons being able to take it to court and perhaps the employer being able to come up on top, the reality of the situation is if you're going to try to fight that on the technicality or find some way to work through the system, some assumptions are being made somewhere. Some mistakes are being made somewhere. Realistically, this particular vaccine bears no guarantees for your protection. However, there is significant evidence suggesting that the risk of adverse reaction is very high. The risk of death is very high. So when I have to make that decision, once again, remember the 4 hungry children at home. Really need the salary to come through. Make the decision. Will you submit to this testing? Will you submit to, let's move the testing off the table. Will you submit to this medical procedure? I am really weighing the possibility of taking this medication and perhaps being one of the ones who dies. I'm really weighing the risk of taking this medication and becoming one of the ones who develops a serious debilitating condition. Weighing the risk of something probably a little less serious. There's so many different things that can go wrong. And on the other side of that, there are no guarantees of anything going right. This is the decision we're asking people to make. And then for an employer to feel confident to go to court, to find some way to work themselves through the process and come out victorious against that employee, is a sad day in human history, if you ask me.
Well, thanks for that, Craigson. And I mean, yeah, you're really tugging at our heartstrings this time around, man. Making it hard for me to play devil's advocate. But we do have a question from one of our viewers, and this question is directed to Mr. Griffith.
Kimar, before you answer,
go ahead.
I just want, we lost Jamal for a second. I just want to make, kind of like give 2 examples. Teachers usually teach you examples, right? So here we're talking about mandating vaccines and the legal implications of mandating vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. But let's just go back to the original point behind why someone would want to mandate, an employer would want to mandate vaccines, right? Even as a society, we would want to mandate vaccines. It's really to stop the spread of COVID, prevent severe illness and death, take the pressure off of our healthcare system, etc., etc. We all know this. We all heard this early in 2020, right? So let's look at some examples, right? What happens when a population is highly vaccinated with this particular group of vaccines, right? Let's look at Israel. Everyone knows about Israel, right? Their vaccination rate is 97%. I don't know what exactly, right? Yet still, even though their vaccination rate was 97%, right? Like a month ago, right? They were experiencing daily cases, hospitalizations, and deaths higher than they were at the same point last year. It is a highly vaccinated population. Let's look at Gibraltar. up to a month ago, the vaccination rate was at 118%. You want only 18% comes from people who enter into the country who are not citizens of the country to work and whatnot. So they counted them into the vaccination percentage as well. 118%, right? Again, the same instance, right? Ridiculously high instances of cases, daily cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. So I just want to give those two examples to ask the question, where does it go? What's the point behind these mandates? I keep making the point. If the vaccine does what it proclaims it does, which Craigson made the point that there's overwhelming evidence to say that it really does not, and the study was actually done by the time you get your second vaccine, you reach it actually reaches peak effectiveness 3 weeks after you've gotten your second dose, right? 3 weeks. And then immediately after that 3 week period, it starts to wane and lose its efficacy and whatnot. Straight down to be heard 6 months later, basically you're an unvaccinated person because the vaccine isn't really doing much for you then. So I keep asking the question, with vaccines that don't do what they purport to do, or don't let me say that outright, where there's significant evidence to suggest that they don't do what they're purporting to do and what the government is purporting to do, what employers is purporting to do, right? Do these mandates make any sense? I'm posing that question.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks for that. But before we answer that question, I just really want to get in a question that was from the audience for Jamal, and then we can get right back to that. So, gentlemen, if you don't mind, just remember what Mr. Clark's question was. So, Jamal, we had a question from one of our viewers, and I'm reading it to Mr. Griffith. Where the seatbelts are concerned, there has been many tests and numerous research done on seatbelts. There is no comparison because the EUA vaccines have never been tested and the population is the trial. That's why there has been a waiver of who is liable. If persons are looking to sue persons for catching COVID, they can also sue for catching the flu. This is a virus and all persons are admonished to follow protocols. What's your reply to that? I think you're still muted.
Yeah, I was muted. That's an interesting question. I'm glad they brought up the whole seatbelt point because that means that they were paying attention. Um, so okay, first thing first, COVID is seen to be different to the common cold or common flu. We know that the effects of it are very similar, but some people do see COVID to be more um, detrimental to your health in terms of long term. So people have had pneumonia, people have had certain things that they wouldn't have had with colds and stuff, and people lose 2 weeks of their earning potential with COVID. With a cold now, a cold is a very common normal occurrence in the just in the way how the world has been. A cold is a normal thing. A cold is not a part of a pandemic, right? We don't say that the common cold is causing a pandemic, do we? No. So when you speak about a pandemic and the virus or the illness that is spreading in a pandemic, if you as an employer or a business owner set the conditions that allows for somebody who is um, one of your customers or employers to catch COVID, to catch whatever they can, and they will take you to court for that because people can be litigious. People can be very, it's not my fault, it's your fault. They may not even have been wearing a mask, but it could be said, I don't need to wear a mask because you should be providing a safe environment. So that's just my take on the whole COVID legislation thing and the whole um, litigation thing. People will be litigious if they want to be, right?
But Jamal, is there a precedent for that though?
I can't say there's a precedent for that, but I'm sure that I can probably find one, to be honest, and I will look for one as soon as they start from speaking. Right? But the thing about the seatbelt, what was the part about the seatbelt that the person spoke to?
All right. They were saying that the seatbelts have been tested and these EUA vaccines have never been tested. They're saying
Right.
basically what I'm gathering from they're saying that a lot of research went into seatbelts versus research into the
Right.
vaccines.
So a lot of research did go into seatbelts, and a lot of research went into the vaccines that occurred before, right? So I know a lot of people are talking about the vaccines came out real fast, the vaccines came out too quick, there was no research, there was blah 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 blah. Please stop, guys, because the vaccines have been in development for over 10 years. The vaccines were being developed for SARS COVID, right? From way back in 2011 or whatever. And they were being developed. So the fact that they were being developed at that point in time,
Can I make
Wait,
a
hold
point
on,
to
hold
that?
on, Mr.
just
Mr.
one
Todd.
second.
Let him finish and
Let me
then
just
I'll let
finish
you go.
this point here. I know you're gonna say about mRNA. I'm not talking about the mRNA vaccination scheme. I'm speaking about the other ones. I would not recommend anyone to take technology that we don't necessarily know. The vaccines that we have taken traditionally for 50, 60, 70, 80, over 100 years, which is the what's the other, where they introduce a little bit of a viral load and you get an inoculation based on that, right? So, all right, I have a question. When there was smallpox,
Jamal, before you make that, before
sure,
you
sure.
ask that question,
Mhm.
the point you made there, Justin, I think you convoluted what you would call vaccines with
Mhm.
these I'm going to call them jabs. Okay, with these jabs now,
So
because
no,
when
so no, but I can't conflate vaccines with jabs because these are all vaccines. So I'm gonna call them what we can call.
but Craigson made the point that these jabs, the mRNA ones specifically, are
Mhm.
completely different. You see, the thing is
But
this,
not,
okay?
but you do
For
understand that all of them are not mRNA.
pardon?
You know that all of them are not an mRNA.
Yeah, but the most popular ones are mRNA, right? They are.
The only one that I know that's mRNA is what's the one? What's is that Pfizer? Pfizer is the mRNA one. AstraZeneca
Moderna as
is an
well.
mRNA one.
Moderna as well. Moderna as well.
I'm Moderna as well.
Right.
AstraZeneca isn't mRNA. I wouldn't recommend taking Johnson Johnson either, but that's also not mRNA. So you have options, right? So let's not conflate the mRNA talk with vaccines in general. When I say vaccines, I mean vaccine technology that we have known and have used for over
But that is
the
but
50s, 60s,
that is the
70s
point
years.
I was trying
I'm
to.
not speaking
But
about mRNA. I'm not speaking about Moderna. I'm not speaking about Pfizer vaccines. Furthermore, when I go and I take my, if I go and take a booster, I'm not taking an mRNA booster because I've read and I've heard about the effects that mRNA boosters have on people's heart rates, on people's neurological systems, and a whole set of things, right? Because as you said, mRNA vaccine technology is new and they're now testing it. However, the other vaccine technology that has been used for 70 plus years that we took when we were kids and we were going to schools for measles, mumps, rubella, that we take for tetanus, because tetanus is a vaccine too. It, tetanus shot that we take if we get stuck by a nail or whatever, that's also a vaccine. That's an inoculation against tetanus, right? So,
Jamal, okay. I'll let you finish. Go ahead. Do you have
no,
any?
no, go on, go on, go on.
No, that's the thing, and that's the sleight of hand that people are doing because these adverse events, the blood clots, the inflammation of the heart, all those things weren't just reported in mRNA vaccines. They were also reported in the AstraZeneca vaccines, and the Johnson and Johnson vaccine was actually recalled. I think it was in England that they actually stopped recommending the Johnson and Johnson vaccine altogether. That was one of the reasons. The other reason was the efficacy of it. Right?
Yeah, that's why I said I wouldn't recommend the Johnson vaccine to anybody based on its efficacy, right? And
Right.
if it is that you're even
But the point that you're making about vaccines kind of hinted at it, you see. I don't know what reason it is, but it's kind of like a sleight of hand. I'm looking at
Mhm.
it that way. Where people are comparing the vaccines that we learn and use for decades, as you pointed out, to these vaccines, right?
No, but
No,
I'm not likening the vaccines that we've known for decades to these vaccines. I'm saying there's a clear difference. There's vaccine technology. Okay, the vaccine technology that we use for 70 years, AstraZeneca uses the exact same vaccine
no,
technology.
not the exact same. Not the
I,
exact same.
I'm telling you,
Not the
guaranteed.
exact same.
I took
It's not.
AstraZeneca.
Okay,
I
gentlemen,
took AstraZeneca, and I took Johnson.
for fear of us being unable to actually give a definitive answer on that particular question, because I was trying to do a little fact check of it and I could not, unfortunately, because all
It's
the
not.
information is
The
right.
vaccine medical use is not mRNA, but is not a weakened form of the virus in the traditional sense. It's not.
It's not.
Exactly. So it is different. It's not mRNA based like Moderna and Pfizer,
And Pfizer,
but
right?
it is different.
Okay, so hold on, gentlemen. I appreciate where we're going, but I don't want to stray too far off from where we were heading, right?
Right.
I will say this: regardless of what technology is being used, can we all agree that countries do have some sort of vetting process for what would be classified as a vaccine, as well as other institutions? Some
May
sort of
I?
vetting process.
May I? May I respond?
Go ahead.
Yes. So, to answer the question quite simply, yes, countries are supposed to have a vetting process. And in this case where countries don't have vetting processes, there are supposed to be regulatory bodies internationally and even locally in more developed countries where they would vet and give the okay, and then smaller countries such as ours would then receive them. But let's look at this schema. Vetting processes in place, fine. The reality is, when we look at the science, because remember what the tagline was from the very beginning of the pandemic, let's follow the science. When we follow the science, the reality is mRNA vaccines, non-mRNA vaccines, all of them have unnaturally high cases of death, of significant adverse reaction, and even mild adverse reaction. The reality is, based on the data available, traditionally every last one of these existing vaccines would have been pulled based on the numbers of injuries related to each of them. And this is each and every single last one from every country of every name that cannot be pronounced and can be pronounced. They have all turned in alarmingly high data indicating that they're dangerous to the persons who take them. And the reality is, don't care how we try to split this. Johnson and Johnson, which we would all agree that it is really the one that you should be most careful with, that is now in Barbados. Both of the mRNA ones, Pfizer BioNTech as well as the Moderna, they are both available in Barbados. Both, or is it just Pfizer? Either way, my question is this, going back to your original question. Do we here in Barbados have any concerns whatsoever? Do we have anyone in place? Because the Ministry of Health is very much on board with the government and their message. We have BAMP making it clear what their position is. We see the debacle that these nurses are facing right now. But the reality of the situation is somebody is okay with bringing every single type of vaccine that they can get their hands on into Barbados, making it available to the Barbadian public. And all of them, whatever your preference, they all have unnaturally high cases of death, significant, and all the different tiers of significance in terms of adverse reaction. Should we really be at this place? I like where Kimara was going when he differentiated between the jab. I don't think he was really necessarily attacking what you were saying, Jamal.
No, I didn't take it as an
I
attack.
have. Okay, great. Because I have seen persons make the differentiation before, and I myself have done it before. And the reality is, I think the differentiation is a good one, simply based on the fact that when we say a vaccine, in the minds of persons hearing the word vaccine, we assume all the things that we assume and know, we believe we know about all other vaccines before. Let's be honest, we've all heard it on the radio and the media here in Barbados as well. The ongoing message, the onslaught on our senses telling us that you can trust the vaccines. We've all been vaccinated for years and years. This is decades of vaccine culture. We know this. We are familiar with this. We can trust the vaccines. Vaccines work. They're safe. Follow the science. The science states otherwise. So when we use language that's very familiar, calling these things vaccines, the definition of a vaccine is a substance entering the body for the purpose of brain inoculation. It does not do that. So if by the dictionary definition is not doing what a vaccine is supposed to do, well then persons really are well within rights to call it something other than a vaccine. And the names could get very creative. But let's just look at the basics. Let's just go down to the very nitty-gritty of logic. It does not do what it is supposed to or expected to. When we use the word vaccine, it gives persons the impression that it does those things. And even the conversation, as I glance over in the comments, the conversations where we see persons assuming that we are putting others at risk by not taking it is unfounded. As long as we follow the science, there's plenty of evidence that we should abandon vaccines altogether. And when persons, I think the question was asked before, and this is where we're really going to end up at. The government has put it very nicely when they said that it's like slices of Swiss cheese. Every layer is going to have its holes. But if we put them all together, we're going to get the best possible protection. Well, guess what? If out of all those slices, I choose to take one out and it happens to be the vaccine, I should still have as close as I can to the best possible protection. Nobody
But
should be victimizing me or calling me a scoundrel for not doing the right thing because I choose
but is
not to use this slice
but
because they know this slice has poisoned John down the road. John, I just said John. I didn't call it any other name. John down the road has poisoned Philip up the road. Marcia just took it. That slice killed however many people, and I chose, but hey, I would take all the others. I would take this slice for mask, this slice for social distancing, this slice for washing up hands. I just want to take this slice that says vaccination. Why then do I have to be victimized? Why do I have to be called out, singled out, and accused of being the greatest scoundrel in all of history because I just don't want this particular slice?
can wait, can I answer that question for you?
Go right ahead.
Okay, you're going to be called a scoundrel, right? Because people have, most people, I should say, have a, I don't want to say superiority complex, but when people, when people go start, okay, when a man's in a rum shop and he drinking rum with you all day long, until you all drinking rum together, you always be great friends. But when this man decides he wants to change his life and he wants to go to God, you're the worst thing in the world. That's why you become. That's why you're his control, and it's just for that reason, bro.
How
You know what
dare
I
you
mean?
give up alcohol and getting drunk with me?
Exactly. So people only
I
it's
like that
only that
analogy.
people is what's the word I'm looking for? People are just high and mighty at that point in time. So you're not really a scoundrel. At the end of the day, to me, if you take your vaccine or not, I have friends. I have very close friends who are not vaccinated. My entire family is vaccinated. I have friends who are vaccinated, and I, for one, I'm not telling anyone to get vaccinated because it's not my job. You know what I mean? It's not my job to convince somebody to get vaccinated. If somebody comes and asks me a question, hey Jamal, what's your experience been with the vaccine? I will tell them what the vaccine did to me, and it didn't do anything bad to me that I have found out as yet, right?
Right.
Um, Kimar. So the back to the point with the vaccine. Oh, first thing first, Kristen. So vaccines, I call it a vaccine, and I will only remain calling it a vaccine or vaccination. I'll call it a job too because same thing. But vaccine meaning to me is, and I looked this up before because um a vaccine. I did a very similar talk to like this, but I was the person who was moderating it as Kimar is doing. So I looked up all this stuff. I just pulled up my notes. So vaccine is supposed to be a substance used to stimulate the production of antibodies and provide immunity against one or several diseases, prepared from the causative agent, which is the actual spike protein of a disease, its products, or a synthetic substitute, treated to act as an antigen without inducing the disease. So I can only call it a vaccine based on on the meaning that I derive from that. And I mean, your meaning that you derive from that may be different, but what I derive from that, I can only call it a vaccine.
Could you read
Uh,
it again? Could you read the first part again?
Sure, of course. A substance used to stimulate the production of antibodies and provide immunity against one or several diseases. The only
Stop right there.
problem
Stop right there.
the
That
only
was the
problem
part
I have
that
with that there,
that-
right, is the immunity part.
that's a pretty big part, though. What you're talking about.
No, you have to understand. Okay, okay. So when people think about vaccines, they think um, total immunity, but that's not how vaccines work, right?
Fair.
I don't think there's any vaccine that you had total immunity. I know we had to go back and get booster shots for everything we had to do back in the day. I didn't just
Not
get one.
everything. Not everything.
Well,
But
for
I get your
measles,
point.
mumps, for a few of them, we had to go back and get booster shots, and it was not pleased. I hated the shots. To be honest, I knew when I was getting shots, and I didn't want to go and get them. But I can only call it that, right? And I'm not. I'm not. It's also not my job as well to not convince somebody to take the vaccine, right? It's also not my job to spread the information. Okay, so when we were talking about just now with the vaccine and the technology, it is very similar, except they're using a spike protein the from the virus and they're putting it in a chimpanzee adenovirus. They call it Chad Ox 1. That's a chimpanzee adenovirus. They stick a chimpanzee adenovirus into your body, which is a chimpanzee cold, very harmless to humans. Humans have caught it before. Stick it into your body, and that's how the AstraZeneca one at least was done. The mRNA ones, I can't speak to those because I checked them and I did not understand how mRNA is supposed to work for me, and I did not feel safe with it. And so far, the indications about it from everybody who I've heard, there are a lot of contraindications that are not good. I read one from a diver who was having problems with his heart beating too fast. He can't hold his breath, all this thing. And I'm a person who runs. I'm a runner. I fancy myself to be actually a really good runner. I can't say that I am, but I fancy myself to be a good runner. And you should always say what you want to be in life. So I'm a great runner, right?
There you go. There you go.
Right. No, you should. You never should beat yourself. There's a warrior in
Of
here.
course.
And if you don't tell the warrior that's in there what it is, he's going to be defeated. You always have to be that person, right? So I don't want to take anything that's going to slow me down. It's going to make my heart beat faster. It's going to make my lung capacity go down. I am 38 years old. I'm not 25. You know what I mean? My years are going up there. So when I heard all these things about the mRNA vaccine, I was very skeptical about it. And people were saying, go get an mRNA vaccine booster because it's going to give you more protection than if you just go back to your AstraZeneca. I'm going back to AstraZeneca if I do go back. And that's me saying if I do go back. Because we're going to have to keep getting boosters all the time, every 6 months or every year or every 2 years for these. And then there's the Omicron variant that just came out, the B.1.1.6. It sounds like an IP address, you know what I mean? But that one, the Omicron one, is not coming, and they just found their third case in the UK. They say it's not as bad as the Delta or the other ones so far, but who says we're not going to have to get a vaccine variant for that? And somebody else asked here, I just want to ask Sir this question that I see somebody answered here. Was it Charles Miller? Not Charles Miller, Katrina, who said she might be slow. Katrina, you're not slow, but the variants came out, and that's why we now have to get the boosters because they now have to change the vaccines to be able to target the particular variants. So you are definitely not slow at all. I just wanted to say that. That's my point, and I'm done.
If I may chime in here a minute, I like to play devil's advocate. So I did a little bit of biology back in my day. Most people who know me would have known that. And I know a little bit about mRNA, messenger RNA.
Mhm.
Basically, the process by which your DNA tells creates the proteins, which are what antibodies are, is done through mRNA and tRNA, transfer RNA. So really and truly, it is kind of a shortcut to get the same outcome. And just trying to put it in layman's terms. So if you're trying to get to Shafat, and there are 3 roads to get to Shafat, The mRNA vaccine is the cart road that you gotta go through a few bumps and a couple wobbles. Make sure your shot's good. You can get there a little faster, but obviously, faster does not necessarily come with comfort.
Your shocks will be worn and your tires might be blown out, but you will
Yeah,
probably get the
but
shot and you will get your wingding.
there you
I
go.
love that. I love that analogy, Kimar.
Um, I could just make a point to that, Kimar. The
Sure.
problem with that, right? And this is a problem that a lot of virologists pointed out about the whole mRNA technology. Actually, Robert Malone, the person who wrote the paper, who actually whole mRNA technology, he was saying the one of the main concerns with these vaccines is they use the messenger RNA to tell your cells to produce the spike protein to for your immune system to actually create the antibody response, right? To create antibodies against this spike protein. The problem comes, right? Because this mRNA doesn't specify which cells will be making this spike protein and how much of this spike protein will be made and when to stop making this spike protein. That is why I actually point out the fact no one knows the long term effects of these, let's call them vaccines. It's a totally and completely different technology. We're in uncharted waters now.
Yep.
So if someone is hesitant, or if people are hesitant about it, that's fair. And that is one of the main reasons why, besides the fact that the vaccines don't really do what they're purported to do in the first place, right? That mandating doesn't make any sense. Now, I want to make one other point, okay? Now, across the world, I don't know if y'all are following the different news stations and doing your own research and all sorts of stuff, right? Generally, most countries, most governments are taking one path out of this pandemic, right? Vaccinate everybody, right? That's the path they choose to take, right? And a lot of people are going along with it because that's the only path they've known and they've heard for like the past 2 years. You gotta vaccinate everybody, you gotta get as close to 100% vaccination rate as possible so we could go back to living life normally, right? Um, I could point you all could actually Google it right now. There's this thing called the Great Barrington Declaration, right? It's signed by over 870,000 clinicians and physicians and academics and stuff all over the world, right? And on their page, they purported an alternative to actually trying to vaccinate everybody because vaccinating people, there was this epidemiologist, Gert Van den Bosch or something like that. When, like, I think in January of this year, he said you don't vaccinate, you don't try to do mass vaccinations in the middle of a pandemic because what's going to happen is going to create the environment for more transmissible variants to actually become popular. That's actually why Delta was actually popularized, right? He actually said that was going to happen, and then he actually talked about the coming thing and then all sorts of stuff. But back to the point that I was going to make, right? What the Great Barrington Declaration, what these physicians were purporting, right, is since we know that COVID targets a very specific cross section of the population, again, the old, those with comorbidities, and the severely obese, right? Since we know this, okay, the data worldwide, the upon millions of people who caught COVID, it's clear. The people who were admitted to ICUs, most of the time, I think like 87% of the time, were either old, obese, or had two or more comorbidities. We know, you can even look at the dashboard here in Barbados. The people who are suffering severe outcomes, who are actually dying, are old, okay, or people with comorbidities. We don't really specify whether or not they have comorbidities or whether or not they're obese, but based on
But just to make a point,
sure.
that's a lot of Barbados.
Pardon?
That is a
Pardon?
lot of Barbados. That's a lot of
That's
Barbados.
Barbados.
Yeah.
In terms of actually we would think that, right? But that's not. Remember, I said two or more comorbidities, right?
Mhm.
And in terms of old people, I think the elderly population of Barbados makes about 16% of the population. That's not a lot, okay? The majority of the work.
16% is a lot. If you put 16% physically into a number, 16% is a lot of people. 16%
Yes.
is over 45,000 people. If you look at the
But Jamal, what I'm trying to say, right, is that the majority of these people will recover from COVID. Is it like and this is just saying that no, let me just get back to the Great Barrington Declaration, right? What they suggested, right, is that since COVID targets I'm gonna kind of add to the point that you're making. Actually, you're gonna agree with me on this, right? What they were suggesting, right, is since COVID targets a very specific cross section of the population, and to the rest of the people, it's no more than a flu. It really is. Like, we don't want to admit that, but that is really the case to the majority of young, healthy people in Barbados. It's nothing more than a flu. The really, really young people, those people are primary school age, most of the time when they develop COVID, they'll be asymptomatic. But what these people were saying is that you protect the vulnerable. So the old, those people with comorbidities, or the severely obese, you get those people vaccinated, right? The really, really old people, you separate them from the population, right? And then what you do, thanks, hold on, and then what you do, thanks to everyone else, COVID will just be like the flu, okay? I am not saying that, the data is saying that. To everyone else.
But how are we going to vaccinate the ones with the comorbidities when they're the ones who are going to die from the vaccines?
But they are part of the group that are at risk. I'm not just talking about the older people, all the at-risk groups. So the old, those persons with comorbidities, and the obese
with comorbidities.
Yes,
That's
correct.
yeah. Right. I mean,
Right,
I
yes.
don't think
Like
those are
them
the
too.
ones who shouldn't be vaccinated, to me, in my opinion.
Right, why not?
Because of the comorbidities. So a lot of times the comorbidities cause contraindications. So they should be given the option, I think, of saying, hey, I want to take a vaccine after checking with my doctor or whatever, right? We shouldn't
Yeah,
be saying,
right, but as far as we know, but as far as we know, I'm going by the data here. As far as we know, the vaccines don't have any interactions with say with people with cancer, diabetes, and many of the other NCDs prevalent in Barbados. As far as the data shows, right? There's certain instances. I think lupus was one or something like that, where your physician would suggest that you don't take the vaccine. But generally, for most comorbidities, right, you get those people vaccinated, right? And then for the remainder of the population, you let COVID run amok. And the interesting thing about it is we wear masks, right? We sanitize, we social distance, we lock down, we get all these curfews. And what is happening? Are the cases dropping? And I'm not just talking about Barbados, I'm talking about worldwide. COVID is still spreading, especially Delta. It's as infectious as the common cold. They've said this, right? You can't stop the spread of it. So this whole thing of vaccinating everybody, all you're doing is you're actually slowing down the spread, because when people get infected with COVID and they recover from it, they develop natural immunity, right? And natural immunity, there have been studies done, is far more robust because the vaccines only target the spike protein, right? Natural immunity, your immune system is being exposed to the entire virus.
you said the vaccine only targets the spike protein.
Yes. The antibodies created
The
from
T
the
cells
vaccine.
created target only the spike protein. Yeah.
Yes, right, good. No, if you catch COVID, right, the immunity is far more. There's studies that were showing that the immunity is 27 times more robust than the immunity caused from gained from vaccination. So I'm just saying, okay, this is an alternate path, right, to herd immunity, and there's evidence to suggest that it actually works. Because look at it, there are two states in the U.S. that I want to point out, okay, I want to point out Florida and California, right? California ridiculously locked down, right? Everything, just really stringent protocols, everything, right? Right now, as I speak, okay, they have some of the highest daily case rates of COVID in the entire US, right? Florida, on the other hand, completely open because people in Florida, they love their freedom, right?
But it's
And
Florida, man. Like Florida, man.
hold on,
Florida are crazy.
yeah. But they might be right in this instance, right? Because
Who knows?
in terms of case rates, we can argue that Florida is actually COVID free, right? Look, there's so many instances. Look at Africa, okay? An extremely poor place. People can't even afford to buy masks, right? Protocols, what? Sanitizing stations, what? No. Yet still many parts of Africa are COVID free because they never shut down. So the virus was allowed to run amok throughout the population. People catch it, people got sick, people recovered. No, we don't want to admit this. For some weird reason, during this entire pandemic, people have been convinced that catching COVID is a bad thing. If you are in a vulnerable group, catching COVID is a bad thing, right?
It is.
If you are in the vast majority of the remainder of the rest of the population, it's not a bad thing. Or think of it this way, okay? When you're a child, all right? When you're a child, your mommy or daddy will tell you, "Man, go outside, eat dirt," okay? Let somebody cough in your face. You want away because you have to prime your immune system. That's how your immune system works. But if you lock down, right? If you lock down, if you starve your immune system from doing its job, right? If you stay inside all the time, if you don't get exercise, funny thing about it is that I haven't heard many people talking about the low hanging fruit because studies were done showing that most of the people who were admitted to ICUs worldwide were either vitamin D deficient, vitamin C deficient, or zinc deficient. That's low hanging fruit, right? All those things are cheap. And they have a profound effect on our immune system's ability to fight off illness and viruses.
But Kimara, you're talking. I think you're right here. You're preaching to the choir, bro. I don't think that Craigson doesn't know that. I certainly don't
No,
not know that.
remember the conversation isn't just a panel, but there are quite a few people in
No,
the
but no, but right, right.
In the
But I say that to
chat,
say,
in the comments as well.
I think the majority of Bajans would agree with you too.
Exactly.
But
Which,
let me say something on that point though.
I'm question. Just let me go. Come on to my ultimate point. Right. Good. Right. Good. I'm preaching to the choir, right? Which means two things, right? A, mandates don't make sense. B, I honestly believe, right, that by this point, okay, the end of November 2021, everyone that would have wanted to take the vaccine took it already. Y'all could say that with some level of certainty, right? Because they were always ready available.
No, I can't say that.
I can't say that either.
Well,
I can't say that at all.
why not?
I know people who want to take the vaccine. Listen,
Uh-huh.
I
They wanted to take the vaccine, but they already haven't theirs yet.
I know people who want to take the vaccine, but they haven't been able to take it because of certain reasons, because of maybe treatments, because of they're not sure, they're waiting to see if somebody they know they're dead. You know what I mean? People I know are waiting for different reasons, right? So I can't say with certain that everyone has taken it. But I want to touch on the point that you said, right? All this stuff, Kumar, is low hanging fruit. Like we know this is low hanging fruit. We know that people are healthy. We know that people should take vitamins. We know that people should exercise. We know people should go in the sun. They just hate the sun. They hate the sun. We hate the sun as a people. We ain't going in the sun, one, right? Number two, a lot of Barbadians have non-communicable diseases that somebody here in the group in the thing says a lot of Bajans have diseases that NCDs that they don't even know about. People
Jamal,
have
Jamal, remember the point I made though. Average person who entered the ICU, right? Not just one comorbidity, two. I think the exact number was 2.7.
two. Okay, right. So okay, I'm not disputing your point. I'm just saying the average person, a lot of people have NCDs that they don't even know, or developing NCDs that they're not aware about. If we really were as a country, we are a island nation. We are a nation that has plentiful food, plentiful nature, plentiful open spaces, plentiful fresh air, and a lot of us do not avail ourselves in the first instance to those things. We can say that, right? And the sad thing is that a lot of the youngsters my age and under, a lot of people who are my age and under, have moved away from traditional things like your grandma would say, go and take something to see, or go and get something to eat, or go and get some fresh air, or go and get yourself used to drones. We've moved away from, or go and get some sea bush. And the fact is, a lot of the vaccines and medications that we take come from a lot of natural remedies that we moved away from, and we don't have to buy them, right? So you have to look at everything. So I totally, I'm on your tangent, bro. I'm totally there with you, and it is low hanging fruit, but it has been low hanging fruit for 20, 30, 40 years, and we have not grabbed the fruit. So we cannot leave it to the average. That's what I think is what it is. We can't leave it to the average person to say, hey, I'm going to do the best thing for my health. because the average person will not do the best thing for their health. They will
Yeah, I
not.
see.
All right,
That's the point,
before we
Jamal.
continue, guys, before we
One more,
continue,
one more point, right, Jamal? But
I
that's
just
the point,
I
Jamal.
just
The
wanted to
average
be
person isn't dying from COVID.
but hold
With
on,
everything you just said, the average person isn't dying from COVID.
Mr.
Fair
Clark,
enough.
we have a comment directed at you here coming on WhatsApp. There are
Yeah.
many people who are healthy who die and have had COVID. I think it would be irresponsible to say risk the virus. Whether you take a vaccine or risk the virus, who's to say which is better?
The data actually says which is better. 99.7% of people recover from COVID. So the data says which is better.
But out of that 99.7 persons you mentioned earlier in your opening salvo,
Mm-hmm.
2.7% of people, well, people with 2.7%, 2.7 comorbidities or
Uh-huh.
higher are
Uh-huh.
at risk, right?
Yeah.
And as we all agreed on, there are people with comorbidities that don't even know that they have it. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, what you are advocating is saying, well, you don't know what's going on, you go and risk COVID.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you're at risk, take the vaccine, right? If your lifestyle, right, lends you to think that you might be at risk. Like for instance, you might be a perfectly healthy person, right? But drinking a rum and coke every night. But you perfectly healthy, right? But you tell yourself, well, you drinking this much, da da da, whatever. I never gonna get tested or anything.
Kima, are you attacking me?
Right?
I
I'm kidding. No, I'm a beer person, man.
what
But
you
right,
said,
but
hit
but
me
but
with
right, but right. You might be a healthy person on the surface, but you are living a particular lifestyle that may suggest, you know what, I may got some underlying conditions, or my family, right, may have a history of some NCD or something like that, right?
Mhm.
If you are at risk, or if you're worried or think you may be at risk, take the vaccine. But what I am saying is based on the data, that is not the vast majority of, all right, think of it this way, okay? We had 240 deaths from COVID, right? Over a 2 year period, right? Any virus in the world, right? That only kills 240 people over a 2 year period, give me that virus. Because the thing about it is that we know the data for COVID so clearly because they post it every day, right? How many people have heart disease killed? How many people have diabetes killed?
More.
Shingles is a big one for old people. No one talks about these things, right?
Shingles.
Mm.
Yes,
Yeah, shingles is a big one for old people for real.
shingles is a serious thing, right?
Yeah.
The flu, there are people dying from the flu and the QEH every single day. Old people who are immune compromised, you see? Like I said, if you are at risk, take the vaccine. If you are not, right, the worst thing you can actually do is take the vaccine because you're actually hampering your immune system from doing its job. Because okay, for instance, I'll use myself in this example. Okay, me, right? If I take the vaccine, what I'm doing is I'm priming my immune system to only attack a single part of the virus, spike protein, right? If I don't take it, right, my immune system will do its job. And by the way, right, I need to remind everybody, okay? COVID-19 is only one of about 5 coronaviruses currently circulating. There's some going around that cause the common cold. There's some that cause the flu. So this whole narrative that your body has never seen COVID-19 before, that is not entirely true, right? Your immune system has seen things like COVID-19. And I think that is what is actually
Hello.
Kimar
Yeah,
dropped out.
yeah.
He's
I
thinking. He's
think.
thinking.
Yeah.
I think may use this opportunity, George, gentlemen. I think first of all, let me commend you, Kamir. This panel is very well balanced. Jamal, you do a good job as
yeah, he did.
you know, defense. And for those in the comments, let me just say that Jamal made it clear from the start. He sits on the fence. He's really straddling. He isn't fully one way or the next in this argument. But keep in mind that if you have so many people who are definitely against, I am against. No question if Kimura is against. But then it may sound as though Jamal is for. But he did say beforehand that he is, you know, Australia and Sydney in the center, and that's a good place to be, in my opinion. But the conversation I'm hearing between Jamal and Kimara is a very familiar conversation. And to be honest, some days, some persons who know me will know that I will sound a lot like Kimara. But the reality is, because this panel is so well balanced, I don't need to be. So let me just bring a little bit more balance by pointing this out, please. That conversation, we hear it everywhere we go every day. But what I would like persons to think about is this. This is what I have come to consider on a daily basis. What the guys have described, the numbers, they should all tell us something. Realistically, most persons who are infected by this virus recover of their own volition. Their immune system does what it's supposed to be, and they get better. This is a proven scientific fact. The numbers confirm it all over the world. When we listen to the radio, when we listen to mainstream media, radio and TV, this is not the picture that they paint. They give us the impression that all is lost and persons die left, right, and center. It is not true. When we consider what the guy said earlier about the low-hanging fruit, zinc and other things that we could supplement our diet with, boost up our intake of these things that we make our immune system far stronger. This is preventative approach. When we listen to mainstream media, do we hear them pushing this message? Prevention is better than cure. I came along and heard Granny say it. I don't know about your households, but why are we not, as a people, approaching it with the attitude of prevention being better than cure? That is not the message coming through the radios and the TVs. When we consider alternative treatments, and it's a very controversial topic, but realistically, around the world, look at countries such as India, who couldn't afford to supply vaccines to all of their people. What did they do? They started sending out care packages of ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. These people have seen a significant turnaround and bounce back significantly from COVID. These medications are proven as safe. And ivermectin in particular, there was so much controversy around it being a horse dewormer and that sort of thing. But the reality is, it's used in both cases. But you got to understand dosage naturally between me and a horse should be different. Right? But ivermectin is actually considered to be one of the greatest medical discoveries in the last 100 years or so. So realistically, these are all options, preventative options. We're not hearing about it in mainstream media. Alternative medical treatments, we're not hearing about those. We're hearing a constant onslaught on all of our psyches. All of us are at this point COVID weary. And what we're seeing is constant onslaughts with one message all the time. Take the vaccine or die. Take the vaccine or inadvertently cause someone else's death. Take the vaccine or give up your job. This is unacceptable in any society in this day and age. And we as Barbadians, I believe, ought to be absolutely outraged that this is what we are facing. Because what I am seeing in this is a case where we're speaking of persons taking care of their mental health in this difficult time. But I see the real difficulty with balancing mental health coming from the constant onslaught of misinformation and giving us the impression that it's a doom and gloom situation where we either take this one course of action that is being pushed at us or we die and everyone we love dies. And even the persons we don't love die. It is not true. It is untrue, and it is disingenuous to keep pushing this message on Barbadians. I believe that we ought to be outraged to know that only one possible solution is being pushed to us. And if we follow the advice of those persons pushing this information, if we follow the science, we find that the solution is not really a solution. Albert Einstein is quoted as saying that to repeat the same action over and over, hoping for a different result, is the very definition of insanity. So to go on the path of vaccination, in my mind, it sounds very much like that definition. Because then I'm going to take the first vaccination, and then the second. Then after a period of time, I'm going to be told that I am now under-vaccinated and I must take the booster. And then I must take another booster. And I'm going to continue on an indefinite schedule of infinite boosters, trying to maintain protection against this one particular virus that it is not killing most persons. 99.7% of persons all over the world have recovered with no special intervention. Whatever the problem is, the quality of your response to the problem either makes it better or it makes it worse. At what point will we as Barbadians stop, as I said before, pump the brakes and find a new strategy? This one is not working. Vaccinating out of an ongoing pandemic is dangerous. This is where we find ourselves. We are being told by the powers that be that it is the only way to go. The evidence suggests that this is not only untrue, but that it is the most dangerous thing we can do. The evidence suggests that there are alternative ways to successfully overcome this illness. Why are we not being given those options? How can we be at the
White,
point where livelihoods are threatened because we are not taking the one option being given to us? When we know there are so many other options out there that can work. So those who would say the employers have a right to protect the workplace, buy some sour sauce, buy some oranges, buy some apples, bring these into the workplace and distribute them. And tell me that you're trying to do everything possible. They don't tell me that the only way Marsha can feed those four children. I don't think she was Marsha before, but whoever this lady is, she can only feed those four children if she agrees to go and take an experimental medication into her body, risk life and livelihood at the end of the day, doing that particular thing. But at the end, when it all comes down to it, it doesn't guarantee her any success in avoiding, treating, and basically stopping in its tracks COVID. How dare you force Marsha into that situation? How dare you force any Barbadian into that situation? This, I think, is a real tragedy that we should be addressing as a people. So the question of whether mandating vaccines is acceptable for frontline workers, middle line, back line, whoever the workers are, really we need to go back to the very basics. Whatever research you do on the vaccines and such is up to you. If you don't do research, it's up to you as well. But one thing that every Barbadian can at least possess, whatever your mental capacity, is this: you have the option to take a vaccine. What does the vaccine guarantee you? Nothing. Full stop. It does not guarantee me anything, because even the claim that it reduces the severity of the infection and the symptoms, it is not absolute. Many fully vaccinated persons are now dead from COVID. It makes no guarantees to make your life in any way better or your experience with COVID in any way better. So anyone, anywhere, forcing, mandating, coercing, you need to stop and be honest. This is what the consultation should be sounding like. Informed consent should simply be, yes, if you take this medication, you're probably going to feel a little better about yourself. When you listen to the ads on the radio, it will not convict you as much. However, it will do nothing to make you safer against COVID or anything else. Roll your sleeve up. That is the consultation you're facing today, peoples. So from that consultation, are you rolling your sleeve up, taking your shot and posting to Instagram fully vaxxed? Or are you becoming a critical thinker? And are you asking the government that's supposed to be serving us, the people, why is this the only option?
All
That's it.
right. So, Mr. Bradford, after that little soliloquy, I gotta ask: was this your attempt at getting into politics? Cause it sounds like you're running. I ain't gonna lie, you're so real good there. Like you want to run for something. Something you want to tell us?
Well, I'll tell you what, I would rather run from politics than to run for. However, I would say I think my best position in the country right now would be outside of politics and just being one of the many Barbadians that will help to keep the politicians honest and perhaps keep them in their place in the sense that they be reminded that they serve the people.
Understood. No, gentlemen, I gotta say thanks because this went way beyond what we had thought, and I like the vibe and I like the energy, and based on the comments that we're seeing, y'all know we gotta do this again, right? We have to do this, but unfortunately, we cannot go on for much longer. Um, but at this time, I would like to wrap up properly. So for those of us who would have joined us late, our panelists, Jamal Griffith entrepreneur, Craig Bradford, the owner of Kaizen Combat, and Kimar Clark, a teacher. But Jamal, before we go, I need our guests or everyone that chimed in to tell us a little bit more about this pizza because I don't know where you are. I don't know how to find you. Give me some
Oh,
information.
so yeah, so I have the best pizza in Barbados, guys. I mean, vaccinated or not, we take everybody's money. So yeah, and we're in the process right now of opening a little bar restaurant as well. And obviously with opening that, I've thought about all this stuff and everything, and I would not be mandating that anybody who works for me takes a vaccine list if they don't want to. But back to
Here,
the
here,
pizza.
here.
I sell pizza. I sell pizza on Saturday mornings at Brighton Farmers Market from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and then I go to Dread Hot Brewery in Thornbury Hill, and I do a pizza pop up there as well. So I have a roving pizza shop, and we set up a nice outdoor oven with a gas tank. Cut the pizza right there in front of you. It's a per 8-inch personal size gourmet pizza. All of the ingredients that go into the pizza are actually cut. So I cut every single. I caramelize the onions. I oven dry
What?
the tomatoes myself. The mushrooms are sautéed. Is like I think of every single flavor and I pair them and put them together. My two biggest selling pizzas are the super yummy and the hot honey. So if you never had spicy honey before, follow me on Instagram. The Instagram is a pizza dough. So what do you want for lunch, guys? I want a pizza dough. So a pizza THO. Follow me, and I would love to serve you guys a pizza at some point in time.
Wow, like right now you got my taste buds going because
But I'll let you know when that's how I'm going for sure. You come and get one, bro.
so other than Instagram, is there a way that I can call and say, yeah, Jamal, where you at? I know you got
Well,
a
Instagram is
few.
the best way to keep in touch with Pizza Dough. But we'll have a
Okay,
location up and running very shortly by the middle of next month. Location is
okay.
on Bay Street and Beckles Road. So I hope that you guys will come down and support and see what the vibe is about.
Well, all I can tell you is shut up and take my money because that sounds delicious. Can't speak
hopefully
for
we
the
can
others.
hopefully we can continue the conversation in person
Yes, with our masks and making sure that
with our mask
we
protocols in
socially
place,
distance.
all
Correct,
the
correct,
layers of the
correct.
Swiss cheese. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Except
yeah,
for
yeah,
except for the flu vaccine.
yeah. So I will go on. So, Mr. Bradford, tell us a little bit about Kaizen Combat, and if I want to get some of this training, what do I have to do?
Yes, Kaizen Combat. What should I say? We would have established already the difficulty I would have faced with COVID. Um, However, I'm very pleased to announce that we're actually preparing to begin offering classes once again. And this is for everyone. This is for civilians. This is for Leos. This is for kids as well. We've now figured out, I believe, and this is where we need to be at this point, understanding how to operate within a COVID environment. And we have a good handle on that at this point. So we're going to be returning to training this time in open space. Believe it or not, we actually always prefer this. Because in combat, we focus not on traditional martial arts. My official ranking would be in traditional martial art. However, cross training and a couple others allows me to be a little bit different. What I'm especially interested in is providing training within the context of how violence tends to be delivered in a real situation. We get very creative with this. So the same principles of striking, of grappling, and even of weapons usage, but we tweak it a little bit. We push very much the self-awareness and situational awareness, prevention, de-escalation techniques, and then actual engagement in violence. I advise persons considering training with us to understand that we're learning the art of violence. So yes, I expect that it will get scary, become difficult. It's taxing mentally. But at the end of the day, that's life, isn't it? So we will be announcing very soon via our Instagram the location for the training, the times, the dates, and such, the prices. And I would encourage everyone. The requests for the return, they're there. It can't be ignored any longer. So we're gonna give persons what they're asking for. It's surprising the amount of persons now asking to have some official training in self-defense. Come and try something a little bit different. There's nothing but benefits to be gained here. Nothing but benefits. All age groups are welcome because all persons can, in fact, become stronger in some way, and everyone can benefit from at least having a knowledge and an understanding of violence, how it's perpetuated against persons, and how they can keep themselves safe. So, Instagram, our main point of contact. Just express your interest at that channel, and we will keep it on file so that once we make the announcements, we can contact you directly. And of course, you could always reach out to me via WhatsApp or telephone at 850-9058.
Sorry, Craigson. What's the Instagram?
Kaizen Combat.
Cool.
All right. No, Craig, based on what we said here, we know being healthy, really helps play a part. So I heard you mention a lot about the self-defense aspect. But what if I'm a pacifist? I really ain't about all the violence, whether it is to absorb it via learning to protect versus it. There are people who just, all I want to do is get fit and stay fit. Is that something that you can do for me?
I absolutely love questions from Kimar. I think I could base all my marketing around me just responding to Kimar's question. So I like what you said that you're a pacifist. I have some strong views on that. But to answer the direct question, yes, we can get you fit. But what I would say is this: getting fit while learning a skill is always far better than just trying to get fit. The average person thinks that getting fit involves simply going to the gym and working out. And this is effective, but not everyone really has the lifestyle that is going to lend to consistently attending the gym. But you will find that a person can pick up a sport that they love and gain the fitness that they need from doing just that. So what we seek to do with Kaizen Combat is to make that sport that you come to love combat. So understand the level of fitness that you would accomplish in something like boxing, for example. There really is very little that could compare to boxing as a way of keeping fit. So come out, get the fitness our way. Um, get the fitness our way, and I can assure you, you would not be disappointed in the results. You would not be disappointed with the experience. It's very different. But to speak to pacifism, what I will say is this: there's a very well-known quote that says that basically you cannot be a pacifist if you do not understand or if you are not capable of violence. To say that you're a pacifist and you're not capable of violence, it suggests that you have a choice. If you don't know violence, then you don't really have a choice. You're not choosing pacifism. You're condemned to it. So if you want to choose pacifism, yes, come see us at Kaizen Combat. We can help you with that.
Well said, well said. So, Mr. Clark, I noticed that you were a school teacher. So tell me something. Do you currently offer any sort of lessons, or you have any intentions to offer lessons?
No, I do not. The stupidity that is online school is take enough out of me. So, and since you can't do face-to-face lessons, it would make no sense. Online learning is like 20% of what children need. So it's really a pointless endeavor in futility, and I don't think I'm the only teacher that thinks that.
Well, I've heard parents echo that sentiment as well. So I can take your point. Okay. So, um, gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming here. But everybody talking about
Kimar,
their little ventures.
hey Kimar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, Kimar Clark. Both Kimars, really and truly. Kimar, Clark, I just want to ask a question. Do you think though that that's the way kids are going to be more accustomed to learning in the future? Maybe that's a conversation we can have at some other point in time.
actually, no, you see. And because childhood now is so different, right? Because most of the kids in my class, like they spend most of their free time on a tablet, on a computer, on a laptop, in front of the TV, whatnot, right?
Mhm.
This is where I would argue that no, in this time, right, the face-to-face environment is even more important, more vital because they don't get it outside in their home environment. When we were young, we would do mischievousness and do foolishness around the neighborhood and all sort of stuff. Children don't do that now. There are little children in my
They don't
class
have
that, pardon?
they don't have that.
You don't have that? Well, it's a choice though, largely. And it's largely because of like there's a child in my class. He's a boy, like Rambo, fall down, roll, all sort of stuff, right? The boy told me that he spent the entire summer inside. He went to the beach once, but most of his days were spent inside on his tablet playing Roblox. That is a crime. That is
It's
a
a crime.
crime. It's a crime.
It is. So I agree with you 100%.
So
I
yeah,
I
that's
saw some
something.
kids today outside their house. There were two little boys. They were outside playing together, both on their tablets, just sitting down doing nothing but on their tablets, and it was
Yeah,
a shame.
it's
It was a shame.
yeah.
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 But yeah, I guess it's how it is. And I want to just say to Kimar, when you just asked Craigson about um, being a pacifist, it reminded me of a Chinese proverb that I heard that says it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a
Gunner in
war.
a war. Yes, I've heard that. Um,
Yeah.
I was just playing devil's advocate, and that's the reason why
As
Crichton had that vindictive smile on his face because
as you
he
do
knows
so
full
well, you
well
are a great devil's advocate.
he knows fully well that um, I am not a pacifist because I was condemned to it. I'm a pacifist by choice, for sure, right? But gentlemen, I'm glad you all came out. While we all agree that vaccination should not be mandatory, our reasons differ, and it gave us a good opportunity to talk. But one thing that we seem to all agree on is we should follow the protocols, social distancing, sanitizing, washing of hands, etc. Right? At this
Don't,
point, I would like to.
don't say wearing masks. Don't say that.
Okay. Well, Mr. Clark is opposed to wearing masks, but either way, whichever you follow the protocols. Now,
Air
it
particles are
is
5,000 times smaller than the holes in masks. Just saying. Masks do very little.
so. What I would put in at this point, I my personal experience I can share here is since the introduction of all these hand sanitizers, I realized my hands used to be a little dry, like kind of
Yeah.
often. So um, I reached out to, yeah, 'cause I like to support the local entrepreneurs, the small businessman. That's me. I'm a small businessman, so I support my people, right? And there's a young lady who owns a business called Island Inspirations by Ree, and she makes these wonderful like homemade soaps, and she makes these body butters and body lotions. Listen, you see, from the time I started using her products, I haven't looked elsewhere, right? And she would have sent me an image. She's having a special on gift baskets this December. So you guys can check her out on Instagram, Island Inspirations by Ree. Hold on, let me see.
Very good. Island Inspirations by Reese by Ree.
By Ree, yeah.
Cool.
So she's having a special. You could listen. I cannot speak more highly of her products. You see her body butters, and she also does lip balms and face scrubs. Listen, I am a manly man, right? So I didn't know nothing about face scrubs, but she also educates you on the use of these things, right? And I started using one of her face scrubs, and I realized I look a little bit younger than I am. I mean, I am only like, to follow Jamal's example, I'm only 25, right? I'm only 25. But when I was done, I looked 19. I was like, bruh, I did not know this. The power of this stuff, and all made locally, products that you secure here in Barbados. So check her out. Yeah. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you again. We will be doing this again. Hopefully, we can do it at a pizza pop up with Jamal, drag him out from the kitchen, have this conversation in person while following the protocols. And I think it's important that we get this conversation going. And it is important that we, as young entrepreneurs, we're next in line to take over the country. Our voices need to be heard. And I'm glad that we could get this platform to do so. And I would like to thank all of our viewers who tuned in, everybody who commented. Some of you would have sent us some questions on WhatsApp. Sorry, we didn't get to all of it. It was a very heated exchange. Well, heated in a good way. But I want to thank all of you. And I look forward to doing this again. So just check us out on social media, TSSU Barbados on Facebook, TSSU Digital on YouTube, and TSSU246 on Instagram. We're going to post anytime we're doing something like this. Send us a WhatsApp message. Tell us stuff you like, didn't like. We're open to it. We're looking to improve this. And you will see these faces again. All of these gentlemen here have done a marvelous job. I cannot thank them enough. So thank you all and enjoy. Oh, by the way, happy Independence, Barbados. That is tomorrow. Go out there, be safe, celebrate with your family, celebrate responsibly. Try not to, drink rum or coke, because Mr. Clark would have mentioned that you might not be healthy when you do it.
You can actually go and celebrate tonight for one night.
Naturally, no. I think a statement by the attorney general came out saying that was for specially invited guests, that the curfew is still in effect. So if you're celebrating, please do it from home. Jamal, if you're talking, your mic is muted.
The curfew is apparently still on at 12. Apparently.
Yeah. So yeah, that was.
I think we collectively got too excited.
Yes, probably a bit.
That in and of itself is sad that we get excited about stuff like that. That is wow.
I'm saying. So anyhow, gentlemen, we need to continue this conversation another time. But thank you all for coming. I would leave you to say goodbye to our viewers and leave any closing remarks. Craigston. I'm leaving Craigston last. Jamal, let me go with you, because Craigston will probably give us another pitch to run for Prime Minister.
All I really want to say is just like, if you guys are thinking about the vaccine, make the decision for yourselves. Don't let anyone or anybody try to sway you in one way or another. If it is that you're for it, you're for it. If it's that you're against it, you're against it. If you have taken the vaccine, kudos to you. If you have not taken the vaccine, kudos to you. You're not a social pariah. Congratulations. So nobody has to think of themselves as a social pariah. And people who are thinking of other people as unvaccinated or vaccinated, we need to start thinking about that first, because at the end of the day, the whole thing about the vaccination, or the whole thing about COVID or whatever is supposed to be, it's a people issue, and you have to deal with people as people, not deal with people as categories. Once you go on the lines of categories of you're vaccinated or you're unvaccinated, then we tend to segregate. We know all the problems that can come from segregation. If it is that you're an employer, make sure you follow the rule of the law as it relates to the Employee Rights Act, and don't try to contravene the rights of your employee, or if you can come into trouble with the law. If you're a government official, maybe there should be some kind that the government gives some guidance, some definitive guidance to the people and to the business owners and stuff like that as to what is right and what is wrong, and not leave it for people to have their own interpretations of what is right morally or legally. Right? And that's just it for me. Thank you for being here. It was a pleasure talking to you guys. Pleasure having this discussion. More, and everything. I hope you hear again.
All right. Thank you as well. Mr. Clark?
I just want to say that it's really important on this issue in particular, probably more so than any other issue in human history, to do your own research. The times of relying on mainstream media to get our information or whatnot, I actually heard doctor say that we're living in the post-truth era, whatever that means, whatever you want to take that as, right? But most information is highly censored now. It's highly politicized, especially the ones coming out of America. So, like, do your own research. Try to get all of the information, all of it, not just some of it. It might be a little daunting at first, but it's worth it, because the last thing you want to do is put something in your body that you don't need and that you can't take it, and you have an adverse reaction from it, and then there's no recourse, no legal recourse for you to go. You will just sit there in whatever muck or funk that you're in, or whatever state of regret or sickness that you're in, just regretting taking that. Um, like Jamal said, it was a pleasure being here. Like Clarkson said, this panel, Kimar, you did an excellent job selecting the panelists. I think it was really, really well balanced. Um, and yeah, that's it for me.
All right. Mr. Brathwaite.
All right. Sent to the back of the class, but you have to eventually get to the front again. Yes. Again, this was an excellent panel. I really enjoyed this. This experience was worth it. For those of you who would have tuned in, we appreciate the support. I hope you'll keep a close eye on TSSG. They seem to be on the path to doing great things. Gentlemen, and also, let's all meet up on Saturday and have some list pizza because at this point, I'm convinced that it must be something to experience.
No,
And
it
Kimara,
is special.
it is special. There you go. And Kimara, we should probably have a conversation as to an alternative um, for teaching experiences. I think that you may be on the right path as far as what's really needed, the deficit that exists right now. But I think, as entrepreneurs, what we really excel at is finding creative solutions to problems. So let's have a conversation about that. Those of you who tuned in, I want to say this, or rather everybody, the panelists as well. This has become such a divisive subject, but I think it's a good thing that it's become divisive. I think, as Kimara said, we all have to do our research. This is the time for it. We never lived in an age like this before where gathering information was so easy. So, dare to say to everyone, take the time to learn and know for yourself. And even if you don't want to go that far, remember the words of little old Craig. Ask the simple questions, get the simple answers, and make the simple decision. Don't make it too complex. And at the end of the day, we need to understand bats aren't bats. I don't really care for the division between us because ultimately all of us are human beings. We're Barbadians. We're neighbors. Fellow citizens, try to take care of each other, please. If it is that the vaccinated are right, well, then we, the vaccinated, will need some kind of compassion and consideration. And if we unvaccinated are right, we also will need to in time show some compassion and consideration to the vaccinated. Don't let the lines divide us, people. At the end of the day, the only solution comes when we can find a middle ground, have respect for each other, and take care of each other. If it is that the call to be vaccinated is one to take care of each other, well then understand that you can do that whether vaccinated or not. Don't let anyone divide us. And finally, ask the hard questions of those persons who are supposed to be serving us but seem to think that we serve them. Do not get vaccinated. That is my personal opinion. Cheers. Thanks for the experience, you guys. It was a pleasure. I'll see you next time. Kimar definitely has me for part two.
Yes, yes, definitely. Gentlemen, thank you. Viewers, we thank you. Everybody, please be safe, enjoy independence. And whether you are for or against the vaccine, we are all against COVID. So please be safe. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. All right. Bye, everyone.
Cheers.